I'm Dr. Lucien Wilkins. I was the president of the new Hanover-Pender, Brunswick County Medical Society when it was called the Tri-County Medical Society in 1980. Back in 1980, the already very robust medical community here began expanding like crazy, bringing in a lot of new specialists and new services into the community. I recall the Medical Society welcoming a lot of new physicians into the community at every meeting. We had the old guard, the Joe Hoopers, the Frank Reynolds, and the guys who ran healthcare for so long, being replaced by the Dan Gatoves and the Norm Robinsons and Rich Tamasias and other young whippersnappers like myself. A lot of services came in. It was exciting to see the services here expanded. The outreach into the community expanded with more services being out of the hospital and out into the community. It was really the beginning of community health care in southeastern North Carolina. I also remember the Medical Alliance, the women, mainly the spouses of the doctors who really became activists during that period of time. A lot of great leadership. My wife, Frida, was one of them. I remember Terry Donahue and Connie Parker and many others who not only functioned well within the Alliance as a group, and they published great things and raised money for the community, but they also individually, women went out in the community and became, like my wife, photographers, and Connie Parker started her own teenage health care program, and others just brought a lot to the communities. I was really proud of what our wives and spouses did during that period of time. I was also just absolutely thrilled to see the growth of healthcare during that period of time. The 80s was a great time for healthcare with lots of new diagnostic tools. You know, as a gastroenterologist endoscopist, we used the latest equipment. We had huge support by one of the strongest radiology groups in the state. We had other diagnostics come to town that really made internal medicine just a fabulous place to be during that period of time. From a medical society standpoint, I was really impressed with the sort of globalization of interest within the medical society, that we started bringing in speakers that spoke of more global issues rather than just our community, but also we brought in people who were leaders in the national medical society and state medical society. And of course, we had some fabulous membership leaders such as Frank Reynolds, who became the president of the National American Medical Association. And I felt that the fact that we had input from Wilmington into what was going on nationally in our medical association, and also got excellent feedback, was really a tremendous benefit. I also thought that the medical society was just great in the sense that it brought physicians together. Rather than being competitive as physicians can often be, we were collaborative and supportive, and we had a chance to meet doctors from the other counties around us and learn what their issues were. And I felt like the medical society meetings each month was just a wonderful time to get together and bring healthcare, healthcare members into one forum to enjoy each other and enjoy the progress we were making in healthcare. My hat's off to people like Bonnie Brown and other leadership people who stood behind us and helped us tremendously to keep things going. The Medical Society office saved the president of the Medical Society a lot of time and effort, and she was really the glue that tied everything together. So I have very fond memories of the 80s in the Medical Society here, and I'm very proud of my colleagues and very proud to have been a member of the New Hanover County and Southeastern North Carolina group of fine physicians.
I'm Rob Shakar, and I was president of the Medical Society in 2006. And when I think back on my time, what I'm most proud of is that during that time, our society was able to raise enough funds to sponsor a Habitat for Humanity house. I think it was, we always give back every day, but this was a way to give back to the community in a bigger way. It's something that I'm most proud of, and I think it's something that our society should be proud of. I think that what we do every day is amazing. We have a great group of physicians in the community, and this is just another way that we show what we do for this community, and we're always aiming to do that as well as we can. I'm really proud and honored to have served as president of this society. I think what we do every day really speaks for itself in the community, and I take that honor with me wherever I go.
Hi, I'm Jeff Wright. I was president in the year 2000. I think the first thing I'd like to say is how much I appreciate having been a part of the Medical Society and how important this Medical Society has been to our community, and how very much important I think it will be to the future of medicine. We have too much involvement these days, I think, with business and with government, and the Medical Society remains that strong voice of reason on behalf of patients and physicians. The most important things that happened in my year were the things that didn't happen. Many of you may recall that in the year 2000, the world was expected to end. Computers were expected to crash. We were expecting to have delays in our ability to obtain diagnostic services, medications for our patients, and we weren't really sure whether the hospital systems would continue to be able to operate. But fortunately, with a lot of preparation on behalf of a lot of different people, things came off really without a hitch. And we spent the rest of the year having a great year socializing and celebrating and being very happy that the world continued to be and our practices continued to practice. So here's to you, Medical Society, and a happy 150th birthday.
My name is Frank Hobart. I had the pleasure of serving as president of the Medical Society in 2009. Our most memorable accomplishment during my tenure was the funding of the Habitat for Humanity house. We had raised money throughout the year, and fortunately, through an anonymous donation, we were fortunate to receive the money we needed to build the house. And I think for the Medical Society, it was a big accomplishment, and I think everybody felt very good about that. I'm happy to celebrate the 150th year of the Medical Society, and it's a wonderful organization to be a part of. I would say of all the most memorable comments that I ever received from a fellow physician was a thanks, not for anything that we particularly accomplished, but for carrying the torch and maintaining the tradition of the Medical Society and everything that it's done for its fellow physicians.
Hello, my name is Gordon Coleman. I had the honor of being the president of the new Hanover-Pender County Medical Society during the year 1992. I was relatively new to Wilmington at that time. I had moved to Wilmington in 1978, brought here by the Children's Clinic to go into practice, and also by my wife, who was a resident of Wilmington and grew up here, and she was really excited about us returning to her hometown. I got involved in my practice and working at the hospital and working for children, but also during this time got very involved in the Medical Society, not only on the county level, but also on the state level, and also got involved with the State Pediatric Society. It was during this time that medical malpractice lawsuits against pediatricians had started to proliferate, I guess I would say, and we became very concerned that it was going to damage the ability of pediatricians and family practitioners to immunize children in the community and the state. So we had a lot of time was spent in trying to set up a malpractice commission that would review cases, and this kind of got me really interested and more involved in the Medical Society as a whole. I spent time with the County Society. I also did some time with the state society, serving on committees and attending as a delegate to the conventions. But really my love here was at the county society level, because that's where things really mattered, I think. We spent a lot of time during the year that I was president trying to encourage younger people to come into the society and be involved. I think that's still a problem. It seems that the newer physicians are a little more involved with families in practice and less involved in the community as a whole, and that's always been a distress to me. When I came here, the medical society was a very social society. We had lots of good meetings. We had very good social events. The Christmas parties were just unbelievable. Dr. Deneen was the one who organized those, and they were something you look forward to all year long. We now don't have Christmas parties. We have holiday parties, but still the same concept is there. During our time, we had Bonnie Brown as our executive director, part-time, I believe, at that time, and we were working hard to try and get her to be full-time, but we didn't have the money to do that. So one of the things we had to implement during my tenure was a raise of dues, $50, and I can't remember whether that was a month or a year, but I think it may have just been a year. And that was a hurdle we had to go over. The dues hadn't been raised in decades, I don't think, and that was a real fight to get through, but it passed. We also became very highly technological during those times. We went out and we purchased for a mere $600 a fax machine. This was also, we struggled over, because to get this high technology was going to take a big part out of our budget, but we did it, and of course now you can pick up a fax machine and a computer and a scanner and a copier for about $100. So the $600 really hurt back then. It was a good time to be practicing in Wilmington, but there were I guess, drums beating or thunder rolling on the national front as the government began to have more and more of what we always used to refer to as intrusions on the medical society. We had some interesting speakers during that time that would come and talk to the society, one of which was Charlie Rose, who came and was talking to us on the future of medicine as it relates to the government. I would love to see his speech and be able to read it now and just see how right or how wrong he was in making his predictions, because what's happened with medicine now has become very, very startling and very difficult to process for a lot of us older physicians. I retired 3 years ago. I've really enjoyed my retirement. I think back on the time I spent with the Medical Society and with working as a physician in New Hanover County, and I have nothing but fond memories of that. But retirement is a good thing, and I'm glad I finally got there.
Hi, my name is Wayne Varner. I was privileged to be the president of the New Hanover-Pender County Medical Society in 1996. I'm a pathologist. I was quite surprised when one day Dr. Dan Gatovy, who was a member of the nominating committee and of the Medical Society, caught me in the doctor's lounge at Cape Fear Hospital and asked me if I would consider being put up as the vice president of the Medical Society for 1995, and of course that involved carrying on subsequently as the president the following year. I was honored. I felt deeply complimented because as a pathologist, I'm usually behind the scenes, not very public and not very societal. But I was honored and thought it would be a wonderful way to contribute to the medical community in Wilmington. At that time, I think we were about 250 strong, and that was even larger than when I had come in 1986, 10 years prior. I remember the camaraderie that was a big part of the Medical Society when I arrived. The monthly meetings were reunions and celebrated as such with a lot of fun, joviality, and something that as I became president, I wanted to help resuscitate, because as the medical community had gotten larger, we had begun to lose a bit of that. And I think a lot of it was to do with practices becoming much, much larger and finding their fellowship within their own groups instead of looking for it in the wider medical community. Well, there were some highlights that I really enjoyed, and the opportunity that I experienced as being the president was the opportunity to interject some of my own interests. One of the first was an invitation I'd extended to the deans of the 4 medical schools in the state. I had each one of them come and address the Medical Society here at a monthly meeting, not only what's going on at their individual medical schools, but also particularly what do you look for as you consider applications from students across the state and across the country for the 4 medical schools. That was really important to me, and I learned through that one of the big things that was always sought for was altruism, a touch of altruism within the applicant to show that he wasn't just coming into the profession because of the idea that there was a lot of money to be made, and that really felt good to me. Another opportunity I seized was it's anything that promoted fellowship within the medical community among the members. Some good things happened that year. I think largely at the instigation of our wonderful executive secretary at the time, Bonnie Brown, the establishment of the retired physician section. We had retired physicians. Of course, they stayed a part of our medical society and attended the medical society monthly meetings with their wives, but they also had the unique interest of being beyond medicine now and the profession of medicine and sharing times that weren't so oriented toward the advancement of the medical agenda. That was good. There was an honored part of that process was to get to know my colleagues better, and I really appreciated that. Because in pathology, you're locked in a box, and sometimes they come by and meet you and see you and ask questions about particular cases. But the opportunity to be in the wider medical community was great. The deans of the 4 medical schools, as I said, was one of them. At the same time, during that year, Connie Parker, who was the wife of Dr. Bill Parker, local neurosurgeon, and Connie herself is still a very active contributor to Wilmington and our state as a whole. She was fostering the idea that became the Wilmington Health Access for Teens, which goes on today, an opportunity, a place for young people who wanted health information and to know how to access health care, a place for them to come and raise their questions. I was delighted as president to sit on her organizing committee, and felt like that was really something worth doing at that time. And Bonnie Brown will remember that was a year we searched for a new place to live. When Bonnie came on, I think the initial office was shared with the hospital foundation over on 17th Street. The foundation outgrew the building, and we were the visitors, so we had to leave. We scampered around town, well, Bonnie scampered around town and finally found a place over on Greenleaf Drive, just behind Cape Fear Hospital, which only recently has been given up for one of the offices, previous physician offices on the Cape Fear Hospital campus. So those were some busy times. highlights of the year, we had the AMA president, Dr. Percy Wilkins. Well, actually, at the time, he was president-elect. He came and spoke with our society, spent a day with us in town. The winner of the New Hanover-Pender County Medical Society pre-medical scholarship that year was a delightful young lady named Amy Coleman, who had excelled in so many fields, even horse training as well as academics, tutoring, such, was the 8th recipient of the New Hanover-Pender County pre-medical scholarship. Most impressive young woman. One of the events of that year that was close to my heart was it was the year that Cape Fear Memorial Hospital was bought by Columbia HCA. That impacted a lot of our lives. A number of us who worked largely at Cape Fear were dramatically impacted by that. That relationship only lasted a couple of years, because then New Hanover Regional Medical Center, as it was known then, had the opportunity to buy the Cape Fear Hospital from Columbia and established a Center of Excellence for Orthopedic Surgery at the old Cape Fear Hospital. We have enjoyed that facility for these many years, but look forward to the time when it might be replaced by a new and more modern orthopedic hospital. Well, those are the memories I had. They were humbling memories. Just a real delight to be able to work with so many of my medical colleagues. And I'll touch just the last memory is that during that year, I wanted our society meetings to start off with a Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. We had to convince Cape Fear Country Club to go buy one and bring it out for us so that we could use it at the beginning of every meeting. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Hello, my name is Henry Temple, and I was a Medical Society president in 1997, and I'm here to just give a few rambling musings about what I remember. It was a different time in medicine in '97, but it was still modern medicine. It wasn't back in the ancient history of the New Hanover Medical Society. I think the biggest issue we had in 1997 was our hospital. There was some rumblings about what to do with the hospital, and there was thoughts of selling it to a proprietary corporation. There was thoughts about forming a hospital authority, and the doctors in our community have always had an important presence in the governance of the hospital, and we often had 3, 4, sometimes even 5 board members on there, and it was always valuable to, I think, the citizens as well as the doctors. And so I'm not sure how much the Medical Society influenced the hospital, but we did make a motion that carried that we maintain as a community hospital with a strong physician presence, and that is what we are today. And we didn't sell it off to a corporation, and we didn't become an independent authority, which has its own sets of problems. I think that was probably if there was any kind of one thing that happened in my tenure that I recall, that's it. It was a time of mostly private practice. The hospital, before hospital, owned private physician practices. And I think the doctors probably were more involved in the community and in the hospital, running the hospital, than they are now. The other, I remember it was a very pleasant time. It was easy because of Bonnie. Bonnie would never let you do anything bad or incorrect. She would guide you through the meetings, and it was a pleasure. And it was just very, very easy. I remember it was a great honor to be chosen to represent the doctors in our community, and I remember it as a very pleasant time. Thank you.
I'm Gene McMurray, and I was president of the Hanover-Pender Medical Society in 2002. And I have thoroughly enjoyed my 32 years in this medical society. The highlights of my year were that it was right after 9/11, about 4 months after I started in January of 2002. And one of our first memorable programs that year was a professor from UNCW talked about the rise of the Islamic movement, and that was very poignant for the time, and I think very much enjoyed by everybody at the Medical Society. The other programs I remember that year were one of our own members, Fred Butler, talking about his trip to Vietnam mission trip, as well as his attempt to ascend to Mount Everest. And then I think the third program that year that I enjoyed was Brad Brownell, who was the UNCW basketball coach, and he has gone on to have success at Clemson, where he is today. But I think the real treasure of that year were the executive committee meetings, which we had in the little building 2 weeks before our meetings, and that was it was so much fun, and we were graced by the wisdom and wit of former North Carolina president, Medical Society presidents, Frank Reynolds and C.K. Rust. And those meetings were just very special. The other Medical Society events that I enjoyed over the 32 years were the delegate meetings at the North Carolina Medical Society. And I went a number of times as a voting delegate, and I really particularly enjoyed the meetings at Pinehurst, where we would have a big breakfast on Saturday morning and go over the legislation that was proposed and decide how we were going to vote as a group. And then lastly, I think the best times were at Bald Head as a part of the medical retreat, where we went for CME credits, and much of the presentations were given by our own members, and it was a time when you could get out of the office and relax and enjoy getting to know your fellow members of the society as well as their spouses. And I think all of this, we can thank Bonnie Brown, our executive director, for putting this together, and with her able assistant, Vanetta. And I'm very thankful for having the opportunity to serve in this medical society.